Hi, Trish. I'm coming to you live from my bedroom, reflecting on how I make decisions. So, in reading Walter Earl Fluker's work, which I really appreciate, his book, Ethical Leadership, The Quest for Character, Civility, and Community, I appreciate so much his framing at the beginning of chapter 6 on page 157 when he talks about the importance of ethical leaders being awake. And then on page 161, he goes on to talk about it's not just about being conscious, but being aware that you're conscious. And so I think that is really critical. And so I'd like to frame that in terms of my process. That's what it made me think about. When I have to make a decision, I begin by sitting in meditation. I like the Anapana practice of inhaling and exhaling and paying attention to this area of the nose and watching the breath come in and out of the body, and then taking in a few deep inhalations when my mind begins to wander. So it helps me just to be still. Sometimes I get really distracted by all of the risings. Sometimes I'm able just to observe them and notice. But what usually happens is that it gets me to a place of being present with what's in my body and what's around me. Then I move to this place of asking a question. I ask a question and I say a prayer, and then I listen. I listen for what comes up inside of me. I listen to what is around me, and I'm always given the guidance that I need. Also, when I'm working on making decisions, and especially decisions impacting other people with whom I'm working, I am sure to invite them into their own process of listening to themselves and invite them into the process of looking at what we're trying to create, and then inviting everyone to talk about what they see moving forward. And so if it's related to our school, we look at our school's mission. If it's related to my class, my students and I, we look at our values and what we're trying to create in our work moving forward. So that really is my process. Fluker on page 165, he talks about how the way that we see ourselves as a part of a larger whole impacts how we do our work in the world, essentially. And I believe that that is wholeheartedly true. And so when I'm working with my students, I'll use them as an example because I'll be doing a participatory action research project, and I've invited them to work with me on that project. So when I work with my students, I do the same thing. And so I'll use an example. So every year, the class is project-based, and so the students determine the course of their work or their study for the year. And this isn't part of my dissertation, but this is part of what my students are going to be in this class. So I invited them into a process of meditation, and then I invited them to consider what they want to do, because the whole point of this class is to teach others the work of restorative practice that they have learned. These are young people who have had a couple of years of doing the work, and they have a deeper understanding and are in a space to teach others. And in past years, my students have traveled around the country to teach other people this work, but this year, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So I asked my students what they wanted to do, and they said they wanted to share the work of restorative practice with their families. And it really It touched me so deep. This always happens where they share the work with their families, but they wanted to teach them. And when I said, what do you want them to learn and to be able to understand and hold and do? And essentially, they want to teach them about ancestral healing. And one of my students, Anicia Johnson, said, we want to help them to know that some of the stories that they're holding about themselves aren't true and how they can change them. They also talked about wanting to talk about racism and the system of white supremacy and working with their families on how to navigate that and how to talk about it. They also want to teach them how to facilitate circles to connect and also circles for healing, repair harm circles. And some of them have done that work with their families, but they want to do a more intentional way. And so that work is so important. And had I dictated what we were going to do, I wouldn't have created that. And so it was really important that came from them. And I think that talking about their education and their learning and making decisions about what they are going to create and what they are going to do is a very important ethical question, because my students are people who have been marginalized and minoritized, and I think it's very important that they understand this larger system, that they have a deep connection to themselves, and that they connect to that wisdom so that they can then build, and I can share with them, because I've been in many spaces they haven't, because of my age, because of my identity, and so I can create spaces for them to step into. And so I see our work as a real collaboration and a partnership. Okay, on to the work of Gail Furman, Moral Leadership and the Ethic of Community. Yeah. I mean, I was reading that work and I was saying, yeah, that's really important. On page 6, she talks about how it's not about one leader, but it's about the community and developing the capacity to continually restrict visions of social justice through communal work. That's what we have to do, because we're all part of the community. You know, we're all essential. We all have important stories, and we all have important identities, and it's critical that we all lean into ourselves and lean into each other as we think about building forward. And so I teach many ways, and I've been so blessed to learn so many different ways from so many different teachers, because I'm such a seeker, and I'm very grateful for that. And at this point in my life, I've come to this space of finding my way, and it's always growing and it's always evolving. And what I really appreciate about going back to school and learning this work is continuing to learn. And so I appreciated learning about the Vajrayana form of meditation, which I tried, and Michael Carroll offered that in his book. It's pages 195 to 199. And then also the 6-step process for contemplation. I love that. Page 201 to 206. That was really a powerful practice. So it's really important for me to continue to practice and develop. And I know that when I'm learning something, I've written about this, that I'm going to be asked to teach about it. And the group of students with whom I'm working every year stretches me. And I know that we're together for a reason. And so I continue to work with myself so that I can continue to deepen in my knowing and my understanding, so that I have that to offer to my students. And it's not just the young people with whom I work, but it's the adults whom I teach this work as well. Page 187, Fluker talks about compassion calls the leader alongside with others. And I think that is really true. We walk with people. That's how I see it. We walk with people. And so as I continue to walk through myself as only I can walk with people and invite them to walk through themselves, so we can build that community that Furman talks about. So I think it's really critical to take a stand and to know that what we believe is coming from a space within us. And that's what I appreciated so much about Bill George's work. And he talked about the acronym VUCA, you know, for a leader. That's on page 236 when he talks about vision, understanding, courage, adaptability. And then he had all the examples of the leaders who stood up in different ways, particularly to the current administration. And so in order for us to stand, we have to know who we are. And so I continue to work with my students and work with others to create and make decisions together, because it's only when we allow ourselves to get in the mess with ourselves and with each other that we're able to navigate and move through and look at how we can really, really make changes that are meaningful. And every year I learned so much. And so, you know, you were asking about these articles and if they changed, and the readings, if they changed our thinking or helped me to further articulate. Absolutely. I always continue to evolve, and it's always wonderful to have new vocabulary to describe my experience in a different way, and it helps me to see yet another layer and another level of possibility. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to deepen myself so that I have more to offer as I work with my students and all the other grown folks with whom I get to sit. Thank you.